Ever wonder what it takes to change a nation, to fight for a dream that seems impossible? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most transformative periods in American history. The Civil Rights Movement. It's a story of courage, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of justice that reshaped the United States and inspired the world. Let's rewind to the mid-20th century. For millions of African Americans, especially in the South, the promise of freedom was just that, a promise. The reality was a system of racial segregation known as Jim Crow. These weren't just customs. They were laws. Jim Crow dictated where Black Americans could live, work, eat, and even where their children could go to school. Imagine separate water fountains, separate entrances to buildings, and being forced to sit at the back of the bus. This system was designed to enforce a brutal racial hierarchy, denying basic human dignity and opportunity in every aspect of life, from housing and employment to the fundamental right to vote. But in the face of this systemic injustice, a powerful movement for change was brewing. The fight for civil rights wasn't new, but it gained incredible momentum in the 1950s and 60s, largely through a series of groundbreaking legal battles. One of the most significant was the 1954 Supreme Court case, Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka. For decades, the separate but equal doctrine had justified segregated schools. But a brilliant legal team, led by a lawyer named Thurgood Marshall, argued that separate facilities were inherently unequal. The Supreme Court agreed, declaring that segregating children in public schools was unconstitutional. This decision was a monumental victory. It sent shockwaves across the country and provided the legal foundation for dismantling segregation in all areas of society. However, a court ruling doesn't change hearts and minds overnight. The real work of turning law into reality happened on the streets, in churches, and at lunch counters across the nation. This is where we meet the everyday heroes and iconic leaders who became the face of the movement. One of those figures was Rosa Parks. On December 1st, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, she made a simple yet profound decision. She refused to give up a bus seat to a white passenger. Her arrest wasn't just a random act of defiance. It was a carefully planned act of civil disobedience that sparked the Montgomery Bus Boycott. For over a year, 381 days to be exact, the Black community of Montgomery refused to ride the city buses. They walked, carpooled, and organized their own transportation system. This sustained, nonviolent protest put immense economic pressure on the city and demonstrated the power of collective action. The boycott, led by a young and charismatic minister named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., ultimately led to a Supreme Court ruling that desegregated public buses. This event catapulted Dr. King into the national spotlight. His philosophy of nonviolent resistance, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, became the movement's guiding principle. King believed in confronting injustice with love, peace, and unwavering determination. He argued that the goal was not to defeat or humiliate opponents, but to win them over and create a beloved community. His powerful speeches and sermons galvanized millions, while Dr. King championed nonviolence. Other influential voices emerged with different perspectives. Malcolm X, a prominent figure in the Nation of Islam, advocated for Black empowerment, self-defense, and racial pride. He was critical of the nonviolent approach, arguing that Black people should defend themselves by any means necessary. While his and King's philosophies often contrasted, both men were deeply committed to the liberation of African Americans and played crucial roles in shaping the discourse on race and justice in America. As the movement grew, so did its tactics. In 1960, a new form of protest took hold: the sit-in. It started with 4 Black college students in Greensboro, North Carolina, who sat down at a segregated Woolworth's lunch counter and politely asked to be served. They were refused, but they remained in their seats until the store closed. The next day, more students joined them. Soon, sit-ins were happening all over the South, challenging segregation in diners, libraries, and parks. These young activists faced insults, violence, and arrest, but their peaceful courage exposed the ugliness of segregation to the entire nation. The following year, in 1961, activists, known as the Freedom Riders, took on another challenge. They rode interstate buses into the Deep South to test a Supreme Court decision that had outlawed segregation in bus terminals. These integrated groups of Black and white activists were met with horrific violence from white mobs and local police. Their buses were firebombed, and they were brutally beaten. But the freedom riders persisted. The shocking images of the violence were broadcast around the world, forcing the federal government to step in and enforce the desegregation laws. The momentum continued to build, culminating in one of the most iconic events in American history. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in August 1963. 250,000 people, black and white, gathered at the Lincoln Memorial in a powerful display of unity. It was here that Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his legendary "I Have a Dream" speech. Standing in the shadow of the president who had signed the Emancipation Proclamation, King shared his vision of a future where his children would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. His words became an anthem for the movement and continued to inspire generations. The march created immense pressure on Congress to act. The following year, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This was a landmark piece of legislation. It officially outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It banned segregation in public places and made it illegal for employers to discriminate. It was a massive legislative victory, a direct result of the years of struggle and sacrifice. But the fight wasn't over. One major hurdle remained: the right to vote. Despite the 15th Amendment, Southern states used tactics like poll taxes, literacy tests, and intimidation to prevent African Americans from registering to vote. In 1965, activists focused their efforts on Selma, Alabama, a city where voter suppression was rampant. They organized a series of marches from Selma to the state capital, Montgomery. The first march, on a day that became known as Bloody Sunday, was met with brutal police violence. As peaceful marchers crossed to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they were attacked with tear gas and billy clubs. The nation watched in horror as the events unfolded on their television screens. The public outcry was deafening, and it spurred President Johnson to push for new legislation. Just a few months later, he signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965. This act banned discriminatory voting practices and gave the federal government the power to oversee elections in states with a history of discrimination. It was another monumental achievement, finally securing the most fundamental right of a democracy for millions of Americans. And let's not forget Thurgood Marshall, the lawyer who argued Brown v. Board. His journey came full circle in 1967 when he was appointed as the first African-American justice on the Supreme Court, the very court where he had once argued to dismantle segregation. The impact of the civil rights movement is immeasurable. It led to the end of legalized segregation and opened doors to political, economic, and social opportunities that had been denied for centuries. But its influence didn't stop at the borders of the United States. The tactics and triumphs of the movement inspired people fighting for justice all over the world. It fueled the women's rights movement, the LGBTQ+ rights movement, and the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. It demonstrated that ordinary people, united in a just cause, could challenge injustice and change the world. The journey for equality is ongoing, and the work of the civil rights movement is far from finished. But by studying this incredible chapter of history, we honor the courage of those who fought and sacrificed, and we arm ourselves with the knowledge and inspiration to continue building a more just and equitable world for all. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history. Let us know in the comments what historical topic you'd like us to cover next. See you in the next video.